There's more of gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are. Humbug, I tell you, humbug!
You're an hallucination brought on by alcohol, Russian vodka poisoned by Chernobyl.
There's more gravy than grave about you, Jacob.
There's more of gravy than of grave about you.
More of gravy than of grave.
What a terrible pun!
This Organized Chaos podcast is brought to you by JEMS Art Studio. JEMS Art Studio is an online store that allows access to prints that you can use for most anything, obviously as just a picture, or as a wallpaper, or as a bookmark, or anything you can think of. You can find JEMS Art Studio at etsy.com/shop/JEMS Art Studio. This podcast is also brought to you by listeners like you. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to an Organized Chaos podcast. I'm your host, George Johnson.
What's
sorry.
going on?
Did you say something?
What's going on? What?
Hey,
what?
Get out of my podcast.
What the fuck? What?
Who the fuck is this guy?
I don't know who the fuck this guy is. What the fuck? I'm just meeting this guy for the first time.
You invited me.
Oh, God. Oh, God. You just gotta throw facts in our face. I see how it is.
Oh, yeah.
Tis this easy to be merry and joyful, my ass. What the hell?
Well,
Yes.
tis the season, after all.
So, on this episode, we're having a three-way. Wait, that didn't come out right. But, yeah, we're being joined by...
trois, as the French say.
Being joined by my very old friend, George Johnson, who was on the last episode of the podcast, which you may have listened to, but you haven't seen it yet, probably, which is something we'll get to in a couple minutes, actually.
Yeah, we will. We will get to it in a couple minutes.
But, yeah, we're doing something a little different. George, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure. I am George. Like Bob said, we go way back. We explained this a little bit in the video that was taken down, but we'll get to a little later. We're not old. That's the only thing I have to say about how long we've known each other.
I've known him for like 2 years.
Yeah, something like that. It hasn't been very long at all. And this is my first time on the podcast. So
well, technically, last time was your first time on the podcast. But in
well,
the video form, this will be their first time seeing you. So,
okay,
Yes.
in this format, new to this format.
ooh,
Oh boy.
yeah, his actual first podcast will be coming out on video. It looks like it's going to be at the end of the month. So that's a twist.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Just in time for Christmas. That's what everybody wanted.
But, yeah, this episode, we're doing something fun. We're doing the Battle of the Christmas Carols. There's so many Christmas carols, we're not going to do them all. We picked 4. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about a couple things that happened. First off, Cowboy Bebop live action was canceled. I know you guys are devastated. Do you guys have any thoughts on this?
Well, I'm not surprised Netflix brought the axe hammer down on any series anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, yeah.
Yeah, well, I used to feel like Netflix would just renew everything. No matter how poorly it did, they would just renew it. And now, not remotely. It changed quickly.
No. And the marketing for that did a great job about, how many barriers they were breaking. And... And then just go, nope, season 2 for you.
Yeah. It honestly, it's not nearly as good, but it feels like full circle, because the original only lasted for a year, but was only meant to last for a year. But it strongly inspired Firefly, which was canceled after a year. And now we got Cowboy Bebop coming back. Canceled after a year.
Well, I mean, Firefly got a movie.
Yeah.
Cowboy Bebop did too, didn't they?
The animated one, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good movie too.
So was Serenity.
Oh yeah, Serenity was excellent as well.
Serenity was a great, kind of good closure.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I was about ready to say the Cowboy Bebop movie was closure, but no, it was just a story in the middle. It was a big story in the middle.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, there's some choices I wouldn't have done, but that's for another day.
Yeah, we could do a whole discussion on that one. But yeah. I guess I'm the only one that's actually sat down and watched it all the way through, and my thoughts on it are kind of eh. I thought the series had potential. I thought a lot of the characters were pretty good. I thought Ed was awful. But of course, we barely saw Ed, but it was enough to. Oh. Still, I was interested to see what it did with season 2, but we aren't getting it. I am disappointed we aren't going to see the one guy as Jet anymore. He was fantastic.
Okay.
But yeah, the other thing that happened was the video takedown. The email I get at work. Let me see. I'll go ahead and dig up this email. Oh yeah, the Genesis ranking. So the episode of the podcast from last week is on podcast. Like if you go to any podcasting platform, well, most any, the big ones, Spotify, Apple, Google, you'll see George and I talk about the Genesis concert, our favorite Genesis albums. But the video has been taken down off YouTube. So yeah, that's fun. And they've actually changed how the takedowns are done, which is kind of annoying. It used to be as soon as they do a takedown, the video is instantly taken down, and I can instantly dispute it from that point. I don't even remember what it's called. Essentially just disputing it. And when you dispute it at that point, literally they have a week to file charges against you or reinstate the video. Now we have to wait 7 days, and then we can go through that process, which is annoying. So it's gonna, instead of being a 1 week process, which is obnoxious, it's gonna be a 2 week process. But yeah, that video will come out. I know Bobby hasn't done this before. I imagine George hasn't either. I cannot tell you the number of times I've done this on my main channel. Let's see. Do you guys have any questions on how that how it works?
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've done it a lot. It's annoying, but yeah, it'll be back up. But shall we go to the main event?
Yes.
Ooh.
Talk about that.
Yeah. Why did you go there? Why would you do this?
The second documentary today.
Okay. Hey.
Oh, no, I guess we're talking about these.
Oh, okay.
Well, you were just
right.
you were cut out during the get back thing. So, hey.
I'm not around for one, and it gets pulled down.
Oh my God. Yes, it's called pure skill on my part. I could take down a video like
but
you
I'm
won't
honestly,
believe.
Really, I'll be honest. When I first saw the photos you had shared, man, I was like, "Oh, those are some sweet seats.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those are nice." Then I looked at. I was also looking at them in the drive today.
Yeah, I didn't even. I don't even think I posted the photos. I posted the videos.
There's a few.
No, I posted the videos.
There's a few blurry ones. There's a few blurry ones too. But he was excited.
Oh, you looked up on the podcast files where I shared them. Oh,
yeah.
You cheated. Okay, yeah. Those aren't the ones I've actually shared yet. How dare you?
I know. Well, I had to binge some movies today.
Yes, you did. Well, we got 4 Christmas carols we are going to be comparing. And I actually haven't explained the scoring system to you guys yet, which I'll do now, which I think will be interesting.
Well, as you can see, they're all zeros.
All these movies suck.
Yes.
They're garbage. They're shit. Of course, Patrick Stewart gets 1 point for being Patrick Stewart, and it wins, and that's the end.
Well, and I mean, also, Picard was a dick.
Yeah. They're all dicks in this one.
I mean, I kind of had to watch, like some good old wholesome, Star Trek movies to feel a little better.
Maybe.
And it was Generations.
Oh, jeez. So,
see what you did.
We have broken down these movies in 5 categories from worst to best. And we're just going to go over them. And then when we get to our best in each category, it will get 1 point. Now, there's 3 of us. That means there's a possibility of 15 points. However, I wanted to make it interesting. Because we can't just make it too simple. So what's going to happen is if a movie doesn't end up with a majority and simply a plurality, we're going to eliminate the bottom movie, and whoever gave that movie a point, their second choice is going to get a point. And then we're going to do that until we end up with one from majority. So, does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, I was concerned. All right.
So we are reading these from worst to best, correct?
And then when we get to the best, that's where your point goes. So, the 5 categories will be supporting cast, sounds, visuals, story, and Scrooge. And we'll just say a couple sentences about each one as we go through. Let's see, I'll go ahead and start off, and then we'll go to Rob, and then George. And then next category, I was thinking we'd go Rob, George, and then myself. And then for visuals, George, just kind of switch it up every time around. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. So I'll kick us off with Best Supporting Cast. For the worst supporting cast, I feel kind of weird putting this one here because it doesn't feel quite right because it's kind of the nature of it. But I had to go with Muppet Christmas Carol. Yeah, the Muppets are great. I love them, but
heartless bastard.
I know I'm a heartless bastard. But you know what? I'm just, if we're gonna just look at it as is, I'm not really connecting with the fur as much as actual actors, and it's got stiff competition because these other movies have amazing supporting cast that aren't Muppets.
That's fair.
That aren't.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
So Muppet Christmas Carol came in number 4. Christmas Carol 1999, Patrick Stewart came in 3rd. This has a solid supporting cast. Just not, some of them are memorable and some of them, And I think this one, again, is coming up against the issue where the other movies have just kind of amazing supporting cast that just really stand out. That being said, 1999 does have Richard E. Grant, and I want to say Joel Grey was the Ghost of Christmas Past. Very memorable. Both did a very good job. Yeah. Number 2, this one actually surprised me. This one surprised me in a couple ways. We're going with Scrooged for number 2. This had a great supporting cast. I love Alfre Woodard as essentially Grace, who is the Bob Cratchit stand-in. God, the actual ghosts in this movie are so cool. I love the taxi driver was actually probably my least favorite, and he was kind of funny. I love Carol Kane as the Ghost of Christmas Present, and I don't know if this really counts as cast, but the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come was actually really fucking good in this movie. It's the best Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come in any of these movies. Really, just wow. And then number 1 for supporting cast, I had to go with 1984, George C. Scott. David Warner, holy shit. I mean, you get Roger Reason there. He's pretty good, but David Warner is just one of those actors I can't just ignore. He is Bob Cratchit, and holy shit, that's the best Bob Cratchit. Fun facts about the other supporting cast. We get we get Joanne Whaley as Ebenezer Scrooge's sister, and as I believe Belle, her girlfriend, we get the actress who played Val Kilmer's love interest in Top Secret. So therefore, we have 2 Val Kilmer love interests from the 80s in this movie, which is a fun fact. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. I'm mostly giving it to the 84 for David Warner because I love David Warner. I'm a sucker. What can I say?
Okay.
But
well, yeah, he is. Yeah.
I have all of you. A blessing to be thankful for.
But Bobby, what are your thoughts?
Okay. Kind of a little varying in difference of yours. I mean, I agree in some aspects, but I kind of went a bit of a different route with it.
You're not allowed. You have
my
to
best
completely
supporting cast. Utopia or nothing. All right. For my least favorite, or I guess my bottom pick, I said I got to ping pong my answers. There they are. There. All right. It is going to be the 1990 Patrick Stewart. Now, here's why, and I kind of feel that this problem hurts it, and I kind of thought of it not in the sense of it being a theatrical release, but more of like a made-for-TV movie, which this was. And I do really enjoy this version, and this is really one of my favorites, and even in my selection to be in this battle royale of them. I kind of feel that having such a strong lead in this as Patrick hurts the rest of the cast, because he kind of can't help it, but even the average viewer is watching it to see Picard as Scrooge. So I kind of feel it hurts the performance of everyone else who does a really great job. And agreeable, the ghost of Jacob Marley and Bob Cratchit in this both standout performances along with Patrick Stewart. But I kind of feel it hurts the rest of the cast who also do an amazing job. So that's kind of why it's down low, because of his star power. Controversial pick, I know.
Yeah.
All right, number 3. And again, is George C. Scott for 84. Though, again, standout performances, but the same thing. Scott steals scenes whenever he's in anything. It naturally happens. He has a powerhouse performance. So I kind of feel it's a thing for the star power that hurts it. I'm not as familiar with the other actors as you are, so this is really my impression of it, but I'm not as familiar with this version either. So that's why that's number 3. Number 2 is Scrooged as well, though there are a lot of it, and the supporting cast takes a lot of liberties with the story so they can make each spirit have their own different bits of uniqueness, like the cab driver for The Ghost of Christmas Past, and Carol Caine as some very mean fairy who can hit people with toasters. And I'm pretty sure, like the bitch hit me with the toaster isn't Dickens, so they do take their own liberties.
Oh, shit, I thought that was from the book.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know how Dickens would have written that, though. Like,
I thought they were cutting it out in the other versions.
And for supporting cast was the Muppets, mostly because of other reasons of different categories why I feel this way, is mostly the environment of the set. And there's a lot of things where that world, those two things can exist perfectly, and most of the actors play it as that. So for them, for the supporting actors who are humans and not made of felt, for their commitment to the bit, The Muppets is the first.
Yeah,
that is for my best supporting cast. Yeah, a little different direction, but
yeah.
My name is Charles Dickens.
And my name is Rizzo the Rat. Hey, wait a second. You're not Charles Dickens.
I am too.
All right. So I'll admit it's been many years since I've seen any of these movies. I have seen them in the past. So this was kind of like a fresh take for me on a lot of these. So for me, I'm really looking at like 3 distinct different movies. Like sometimes there's things I liked in the Christmas Carol with George C. Scott, and other times there's things in the Patrick Stewart version that I like, but we'll get to some of that later. So for the best supporting cast, my number 4, I think, is A Christmas Carol from 99? Is that the one with Patrick Stewart?
Yeah, 99.
Okay. Yeah, and Rob brought up some good points. It felt more like made for TV starring Patrick Stewart. I know his popularity was at the height at that time because it was hot off the heels of, Next Generation. So it seemed like more of a novelty type thing. But I still really enjoyed it. It's just none of the cast really stood out other than Patrick Stewart's performance. So let's move on. My number 3, I chose the George C. Scott Christmas Carol. And again, I don't know the actors as well as the main actor. I thought George C. Scott himself was great in it. He was in Patton, so he kind of has that attitude. So yeah. I thought that was a really well casted role.
Not wrong.
So But in that one also felt the most like a period piece. Like it captured that era very well with the set design, the costumes, the acting style, the dialogue. But again, I can't really remember exactly who was in the cast other than the lead, but they did their job well because nothing really stood out as being off, if that makes sense.
Now I feel like I'm fanboying out about David Warner.
That's all right. No,
my number 2 is the Muppets. And I kind of chuckled when you said stiff competition regarding the Muppets.
Yeah.
I mean, it was literally the Muppets in a Christmas Carol. There wasn't anything out of character for any of the Muppet characters, but it was fun. It was different. I really liked Kermit's son as Tiny Tim. That's probably my favorite Tiny Tim. Michael Caine, excellent in that as well. But I'd have to say my number 1 for supporting cast is Scrooged. They did a nice take on the story, I thought. It was a surprise seeing Karen Allen in that, because Bob, we watched that one when you were over last, and I had forgotten that she was in it. And she's always great. I always like every movie that she's in. She's great. Some of the side characters that they really pulled off, like the slimy corporate kind of thing, very well. The ghosts were unusual but funny. It was just a really good take on it. So my vote for best supporting cast is Scrooged.
Wow. Like Scrooge, I feel like it was number 2 twice and number 1 once. Yeah, we'll kind of get to it, but I feel like that movie kind of surprised me. I didn't remember liking it, but yes.
Taxi! Can you get me to the IBC building in 3 minutes?
Which floor?
Where are we at now? Sounds. So.
Yeah.
Rob, take us off.
I think it's me.
Yep.
All right. So for sounds, is number 4. I have the George C. Scott 84 version. Now with this one, George had actually brought up a good point where it really did feel like a period piece. So, I mean, the eerie stuff was there. It was very present and ominous, but there wasn't anything overly extra like it would be added if it were made today. Like it would look more like something from one of the Warren movies or whatever. Like a lot of unnecessary jump scares and scores. So number 4, I have the George C. Scott version. Number 3, the Patrick Stewart one, though. They did a lot of impressive stuff, and I really did like the sounds with the chains and with the Jacob Marley. Kind of those ones gave me more of an eerie feeling and chills, like the scariness. That one I wrote the same line twice. Sorry.
It happened.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. But yeah, the eeriness, but again, very subtle and overdone. But I kind of found, and you're going to see this through the rest of my rankings, I kind of feel that since these 2 out of the 4 we selected really did play it the safest and the closest to the chest.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of feel it restricted the movie in that aspect. So you have no choice but to look at it as this kind of piece in time, like this little time capsule. So that's why Patrick's down there. For number 2 in sounds will be the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Yeah, this is the only one that's a musical that we talked about.
Yeah, it has, again, very memorable moments, very memorable songs that, you can even gather around and sing with friends if presumably all your friends grew up watching this or are very familiar with the Muppets. And they fit perfectly well into the story without kind of, making it overly like, hey, we do have a song here, or like how most movies will kind of pigeonhole a hit song into it or anything. It was just all done very well and tasteful and not over the top, very Henson style. So that is why that's at 2. Number 1 for sounds is Scrooged. Now the sound design in this is amazing, I think. You kind of hear the aspect and the crumbliness, and you even hear sounds of dirt falling when he first meets his old partner in the beginning. Every time the ghost of Christmas Present is hitting him, it sounds like one of those mosquito zappers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you guys pick up on that? Or even at the end of the film where, he's asking like the audience, he's breaking the fourth wall and asking the left side of the theater to hand, you hear the left side and your left. I was watching on headphones and I heard it through the left channel.
I was wondering if
right.
it'd be something like that. I just listened to it on TV speakers.
Yeah. And that was like, I was like, oh, that's nice. That was also a nice touch. But the whole bit of all the sound design, it really felt like when he was stepping into those little time capsules or pieces wherever the ghosts were taking them, everything sounded, the environment, what your auditory and what we were seeing, it really helped change that world and kind of believe what we were seeing into that. We were falling for what we were watching on the screen pretty much. So the sound design can also help with that too. So number 1 is Scrooge.
We're fighting again. Let's not fight anymore. Oh, look, Faye. What is it?
All right. So for the sound category, I kind of based some things off of sound design and music, just kind of overall kind of soundtrack. Everything was through TV speakers as well. I didn't really get a chance to pick up on like stereo mixes or anything like that. So at my number 4, I put the George C. Scott movie. Again, I know it was made in the 80s, but the way that they put it together was, I don't know what era they were basing it off of in terms of film, but it definitely, again, it wasn't.
Sounded cold, didn't it?
It did sound a little cold, yeah. Not a lot going on in terms of soundtrack. Music was apt. It wasn't necessarily memorable. So I'm just going to jump over to the Patrick Stewart version. Again, there's some different things going on in the sound mix, things that add to the atmosphere, the tension, things that are kind of just going on in the room that you can notice, but it's not like overpowering or anything. But again, nothing really stood out in terms of the music. I did like the overall, recording and effects and things a bit better than the 84 version. And then Scrooge would be next. I know that's probably, it had a more of a modern soundtrack. What was the 88 on that one? Was that right?
Yeah, 88.
7?
Okay.
88.
Late 80s. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
88.
It
Okay.
definitely didn't have a dated soundtrack. It still held up as being somewhat modern. So again, there was a lot of comic in the movies as terms of, comedy and slapstick, so the sounds worked really well with it, I thought. Again, I don't remember much of Danny Elfman's score. I mean, I heard a lot of things like, that sounds a lot like something from Batman Returns, and then that just wasn't a shock when I saw it in the credit.
Yeah.
But I went with the Muppets for number 1, just simply because it had original songs, and I thought, it was a different take on it. They did something different. So just going off of overall soundtrack, they put the extra mile in it, I thought, and added little performances to go along with it. So I vote Muppets for number 1.
'Tis the season to be jolly and joyous. Fa la la, with a burst of pleasure we feel it arrive. Fa la la.
Okay. So, for my number 4, I have Christmas Carol 99. This is largely because I didn't, sound-wise, I could tell you a little bit about all these movies except this one. It has sounds. They exist. Okay.
They're there.
Yeah, they're totally there. They will work. Okay.
It has audio.
Yeah. Number 3 is 84, and it's almost in the same camp. But I could tell you 2 things I like about it. that it did purely sound-wise. Number one, it does have kids caroling at the beginning, which I thought was a nice touch, kind of contrasting Scrooge himself. The other thing it did was the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come has this great, like, creepy, like, sound effect whenever, like, he appears or does something. I just thought that was a nice touch. Number 2 is the only musical in this bunch. It is a Muppet Christmas Carol. I'm largely not thrilled with the songs on here, but, you know, they're nice in the moment. I mean, I'm not hating myself while watching them. But brings us to Scrooge, which, at least in my opinion, was just far and away the winner as far as this one. Just Danny Elfman's score, just a lot of the sound effects, like Rob already brought up, like the dust when we get to the ghost of Jacob, or not Jacob Marley, whoever, the Jacob Marley stand.
The Jacob Marley analogy.
Yeah, no, yeah.
The little stuff, the little tiny subtleties are really what I appreciated.
Yeah.
But again, like, you were watching it through a TV, I was like using these headphones, so I even like kind of like went back a few times and was like, oh, what was that?
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, I was kind of amazed with a lot of this movie because I remember not being too thrilled with it, and like there's funny moments, but I remember not being too thrilled with it. But like actually watching it critically, it's got a lot going for it. That's how I was kind of viewing my take on a lot of them too. Mm-hmm.
And like when I had picked why supporting cast, because anytime Patrick was in a shot, he was center frame. Every time, even moving.
I didn't. So it was like that one.
I was just like, there's one where he's not, and it's at the end where he walks past, and they turn to see, and he's on like the far frame. So we're moving with him, and then the two guys that he meets come into center, and they shake hands in center. And I was like, oh, this is so heartwarming. Picard grew a big old heart that night.
But yeah, Scrooge is definitely my pick.
I don't mind you hitting me, Frank, but take it easy on the Bacardi.
All right. So visuals. I'm not trying to like repeat the same number 4 a lot, but I picked the Patrick Stewart version. I don't know if it was because it was made for TV. I don't know if the other ones were either. We
have 2 made for TV and 2 theatrical releases.
Yeah. Okay. So
which I'm definitely going to get to when we get to visual. When I get to my visual, yeah, George C. Scott was made for TV as well.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just the Patrick Stewart version felt like it was made for TV, if that makes sense.
Yes.
In terms of lighting, set design, I don't know. The George C. Scott version, it felt like it was actually filmed for a higher production. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I mean, the ghosts were fine. I think the ghosts in this version were a little better in terms of like transparency than the George C. Scott version, but overall, it was, I think, the weakest for me. So my number 3 was the Muppets. I mean, it's the Muppets. I mean, there's a lot of visual going on with the puppeteering, which I always have to give credit for it because puppeteering is not an easy task when it comes to filmmaking. The surroundings, the towns, the sets, anything that they used location-wise did feel a little more period, but still wasn't as impressive as some of the other ones. So I put the Muppets in at number 3. Now, number 2, I really liked visually, and that was Scrooged. And I think when we watched it, Bob, I even commented on how good some of the effects still looked.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a very special effects heavy movie, and it still looks good. I mean, there's a lot of creativity that went into it, and I almost picked it as my number 1, almost, just because of how original they went with the direction of it. But I had to give it to the 1984 one. I can't say enough just how much of a period piece that looks like. It looks like it was, the early 1900s just captured on film, And if you didn't know who George C. Scott was, maybe, it would make it seem even more so. So yeah, number 1, Christmas Carol, 84.
Our Savior Christ and his lady on Christmas Day in the morning.
Clear the road.
They wear
Out of the way. Let me
stealth
through.
ship so free on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. They wear the stealth ship.
All right. I think that's to me now. Okay, visuals.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie. Number 3 and number 4 are pretty much tied for me for different reasons. And I think what really hurts is we're looking at theatrical releases versus TV releases. Feel it when you're looking at the visual. And I could go either way because there's stories for there's ideas as to why one would be better than the other. It's really a tie between Christmas Carol 99 and 84. George C. Scott versus Patrick Stewart here. I think visually the story might be more clear in the 1999 one, but there's some really shoddy effects work. I think 84 looks pretty good, but there's some stuff where I could really tell they were being late. There's some edits that could have been way more creative, such as the edit where he's grabbing the robes of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, and it transitions into his bed sheets, and it literally just does a flat cut, and it's like there's a million ways that you could have cheaply made that look great, and they didn't go for him. George is correct, though, however, because like a lot of the sets and a lot of the sets, a lot of the art direction looks pretty good in that one. But there's also like the cone, like in the 1999 one, you clearly see him grab the cone and smother the Ghost of Christmas Past. Whereas in George C. Scott, you kind of just get a cut where he's like holding it, and you don't really know what's going on. So it's really between those two. Number 2 for me, Muppet Christmas Carol. Muppet Christmas Carol is pretty good. It's a Muppet movie. Like I can kind of give it crap for supporting cast, but like they're Muppets, and this is where I kind of appreciate the fact that they're Muppets. It's well done. I gotta appreciate the Muppets in some way.
They're sitting apples for fuck's sakes.
Yes. It looks pretty good, and this is very much a theatrical release. But number 1, it's got to go to Scrooge, man. Scrooge, I love the visual look of the Jacob Marley stand-in. I love the visual look of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. I love when he opens up the robe and you just see like this skeleton with like these weird demon babies yelling. It's so kind of freaky, and it's a contrast.
Looks like Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, it
kind of reminded me of that, like, or Evil Dead 2 or something.
Yeah. It's such a great contrast. Like, the whole movie is this goofy comedy, but then you have this Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come that is super fucking freaky. I love that the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come also, it has like a TV screen face.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
That bothered me more than the souls inside the rib.
Yeah, but the souls just look great. It's just... Yeah, I mean, it almost gets to the point for Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, but also has like the Jacob Marley stand, and it has that thing where he's holding him outside the window, which looks great.
And then he's ripping the muscles off.
Yes, ripping the muscles off. I want to bring it up because that looked great. Oh my god, yeah.
And when he walked away, and when the hand fell, how his arm was still standing up there, so it was like this pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for me. It was kind of a no-brainer.
That looked great.
Yeah.
Even watching that, I was like, holy crap, that looks good still. And it's like, when did this come out? 88?
Plus, they did the production within the production where they were doing the TV studio sets and everything. Yeah, I almost picked that as my number 1.
Yeah, it's... I don't know. For me, it was
close.
Pretty big. It was a winner.
Did our people do that? We're gonna get phone calls.
All right. Number 3 is like we've all been talking and mentioning. It's kind of like that awkward elephant in the room. Is the Patrick Stewart, just the made-for-TV? I can tell it was all like still shot on a set. Very nothing too great. The ghost, they did look impressive, and for made-for-TV CGI.
Yeah.
fairly impressive. And I'll say with Jacob Marley and the first time he dropped the rag and his jaw just kind of did the whole scream thing. Kind of funny, but
Yeah, the jaw
still
thing was
looks
kind of
good.
nice. Yeah.
It was cool. And even well, later I'll talk about the George C. Scott where he just kind of shakes the cage or the chains, and that all still was good and it gave great effect, but not that great of effects. And like you said, some of them will look a little bad. And for that, I just put Patrick Stewart down for the fourth one for his version of the Christmas Carol. Number 3 is the George C. Scott one. Now, the one thing that this did, and the editing, there were some in here that did really kind of get to me.
Mm-hmm.
Though, the ghosts and everything did look better, I think, as transparency, like George brought up in the Patrick Stewart version. These ones I just kind of like the performance of them and how they were lit. Now, this one, again, I could tell it was still a stage, or like a sound stage, but they were acting like they were performing it in a theater. And it sounded to me like that was the room that I was getting. But again, I was with my headphones. That's how I was listening to it. So for the sound design in that aspect, the visuals in that, just the lighting on it is really what I kept. How the ghost, you knew it was because it had that kind of almost like white light or that bluish kind of scary light with Jacob Marley, and the lighting kind of went from all bright white and golden lights to the Ghosts of Christmas Past to kind of more festive looking ones to sad blue and gray with the Ghosts of Christmas Yet to Come. How the lighting just transitioned along with each kind of feel of each spirit. So that was just something subtle I noticed, and I did appreciate that. So I went with George C. Scott. Number 2 goes to the Muppets. Simply just because of how that set operated, and I said I would talk about this. So I happened to just kind of do it because it's fascinating. How do you build a world for humans and Muppets to live and interact in? That's kind of an interesting question, I thought. So I found this featurette where they did build a set that would go about to maybe yay high, so that they could duck down and still operate and perform, and the actors could still walk up there perfectly and just carry the whole scene on. And just for that's interesting. They still made this set like a little living, breathing town. That's just incredible. And it's humans acting with Muppets. That's always incredible to see. I mean, puppeteering is amazing, and this is one where they made Kermit walk on his own. Though it was computers, but that was the first time that had ever happened. So it was
about that, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that as a kid, being blown away by that. It's not like him riding a bike where how they're doing it. And number 1 for visuals, I got to go with the Scrooge. They took, like I've said, they took liberties with their own way of telling the story, and they really had fun with it. And even like George said, the set within the set, how they played within that and within the dreams that he was experiencing, and every bit of it, every world was believable. Even when they would just step through a set door and they're at his brother's house, all of it was great. And this one just looked great. Everything, down to the smoky cab, and he had to have been my favorite. I have to say, he was my favorite. The Ghost of Christmas Past.
Oh.
The smoky, rude as hell New York cab driver.
Now, he might be my least favorite ghost in that movie, but they're all great. I love them all.
No, they're all great, and I can't pick a favorite. I know this is off category, but I really can't pick a favorite of A Christmas Present. I can't pick a favorite. They all were great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that movie really did. All right.
I would feel like I'd be doing a disservice not to pick the Muppet one in that aspect.
Yeah. All right.
Giant.
Yeah.
And be safe. Go, let me go, Lou. God bless you. Oh, no, please.
All right, so on to best story, and it's back to me. So this is where we start seeing some issues with Scrooge, because the story is copy, unfortunately. There is a censor character that apparently someone who worked in that movie had an issue with censors. Because essentially this character is introduced and they spend the whole movie beating the crap out of her. And I'm not going to lie, it gets a little chuckle, but they keep on going back to it. There are extra characters here. Like there's a character that hands Frank a newspaper talking about an old woman that dies. And this character is never seen again. And I'm just thinking, why didn't Grace do that? There's lots of things that the story here is just iffy at best when it's not following the Christmas Carol.
Okay. To that, like, who's that blonde lady that we see in the board meeting, and we always kind of see her in the background? And I noticed at one point she comes up and says something to him, but like, what was the point of showing her with only just to have her do that?
Yeah, no, there are characters that feel like there's the character who's brought on to be like the guy who's keeping an eye on Frank, and it really feels like we should be like on his side. There are moments where he really puts Frank in his place, but you hate him, probably even more than Frank. So I'm not sure if we're supposed to hate him more than Frank, or if we're supposed to be somewhat on his side, because Frank is fairly despicable until the end. And honestly, the ending where he's just talked to the audience feels really lazy to me. Just him yakking. It's like, and we'll get to best Scrooge or best Scrooge stand-in later. But there's lots of things where it doesn't work. I'm afraid Scrooge is past its prime on this list for me. Muppet Christmas Carol comes in number 3. Honestly, like, this one's not bad. It follows the story fairly religiously, but obviously it does its variations, and the other two are just so faithful that
we don't get to little children.
So it's not that Muppet Christmas Carol really is at fault here, but number 2 is actually going to go for 1984, which I feel is very good, and it feels like a very faithful adaptation, but I feel like there is a bit more they could have done with it, which I felt like was actually reached in my number 1 pick, which would be the Patrick Stewart one. It talks about the chains of Jacob Marley and how Scrooge's chains are just that long, except 7 years longer, which I believe was also brought up in the Albert Finney version, which makes me think that's probably from the book. And there's lots of little details like this where they really kind of explore. I feel like it fleshes it out a bit more as far as the raw story. So for the first point it gets so far today, I'm giving it to Christmas Carol 99 for the story.
I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. It is a ponderous chain.
Rob, what do you think of the stories?
Okay. Now, I know that I've kind of been singing its praises mostly, but, number 4, I gotta take Scrooged because it is kind of a alternative telling of it, and when it comes to, and I took this category as best story to, like, how close to the source material, or as best to my knowledge, because it's been, like, at least 8 years since I've read it. So, that Scrooge, it took liberties and it did have fun within that little safety, or I guess like their own universe of that movie, but it still is my number 4 pick. Number 3 is the Muppets, just because it again, they couldn't go and tell all of it and be very true, but it is a very faithful adaptation. And this would have been my number 4 pick, but I do like it because at the end, Gonzo does encourage you to actually go read the book.
Hey.
And I don't know. Gonzo is my favorite Muppet, so I was just pleased that he was the storyteller. He got to hang out for that movie.
He also insisted that he was Charles Dickens. I had to look that up on Google. I wasn't too sure.
Yeah, no. He even says, like, the great Gonzo as Charles Dickens. Number 3, I'm gonna have to kind of disagree with you, or number 2, sorry. I'm gonna disagree with you, Bob, but I got to put the Patrick Stewart one at around number 2. Is Patrick Stewart, though they did stick a lot more, and they did talk more about the chains. But I kind of felt that he kind of like a showing and not telling, as they did in the number 1 with George C. Scott, where because I kind of felt him shaking him there, was showing him like, this is what you got to look at, man, like trying to emphasize it to him.
It's really
kind of also being a little
story for me. Really?
Yeah. Yes, but number 1, I had to go with that, and it's George C. Scott. Like, first, I'll admit I've only recently discovered his greatness as an actor within the past 2 years, and it was stumbling upon just a random sequel to a horror franchise just out of curiosity. It's like, well, I've seen the second part. I've never seen part 3. Let me watch part 3, and he happened to be this lead, and holy crap, he's great.
Mm-hmm.
He's great. The movie was Exorcist 3 too, so I know, Bob, I've talked to you about that. George,
that's right.
Yeah.
I completely forgot that he was in that.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Him and Ed Flanders.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, both of those guys. Holy crap. I've been sleeping on them, so. But yes, number 1, I will give it to that.
Tell me, what man was that whom we saw lying dead?
George C. Scott's one.
Before we get too far, I want to go ahead and point out that I have Googled an image of Charles Dickens. So I've Googled that just to correct the record. Here is a picture of Charles Dickens. So,
damn
guys, right there.
Okay. Well, that makes more sense. My confusion is at ease.
He is. It was the hat.
Yes.
It was the hat that was throwing.
Yeah, the hat was really throwing me off.
Yeah.
George, what are your picks for story?
All right. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, I don't think I really dived as much into like the smaller details of the story, but for me, of these 4 movies, there are 3 distinct stories. There's, A Christmas Carol, Scrooged, and the Muppets version.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're all different kind of takes on the same story, with A Christmas Carol being close to the source material and the other 2 not so much. So, and I feel really bad because I did quite enjoy the Patrick Stewart movie, but I keep kind of putting it at the bottom of my list, and that's not intentional. I'm just like, it's kind of an alternate version of the George C. Scott movie. And when I watched it, it seemed there were a lot of scenes even that were the same scene, or in some cases the same dialogue, but probably pulled from the book. I think, Bob, we've mentioned this in passing.
Those are the 2 that are the most faithful by a mile. Like, for just judging accuracy, it's those 2 competing against each other.
Right. But if I'm putting everything up against each other with these 4 films, I would put that one in last place, I think. Because I think that everything that's notable about it is addressed in the George C. Scott version, other than maybe going into the better details with the ghosts, like you guys have brought up. Explaining a little bit more behind how the whole system works with visiting the different areas. I thought maybe it was maybe a bit better than the George C. Scott version there. But number 3, I went with the Muppets. Again, it's not a completely different retelling. But it is different. They've added in a lot of humor type dialogue. It definitely has a different flow to the story, even though the structure is kind of the same. I don't have much to say about it. It just was different, where the 1999 version wasn't too different from what we saw with the 84 version. Scrooge kind of had its own unique story because it did a lot of different things that I haven't seen in any other kind of adaptation of the story. It's almost kind of like its own thing that just happens to kind of follow a familiar story. So, and then my number 1, it's, again, just the George C. Scott version. If I'm picking something that best tells the story out of all of these movies, which is really just the heart of the story. It's not an adaptation. It's not a remixed version or anything like that. It's just telling the actual story. And I think the George C. Scott version did the best job of that.
Is there some peculiar power which emanates from your torch?
Oh, yes. There is.
So, here we go.
Real quick to the stories. Real quick to best story and regarding Scrooged. One of the writers of that was Michael O'Donoghue. Now, he's like a famous comedy writer, but he also started off with National Lampoon magazine, and I believe he later went on to write some bits for SNL.
That don't surprise me, especially with Bill Murray involved.
He is an American writer and performer. He was known for his dark and destructive style of comedy and humor. He was a major contributor to National Lampoon magazine, and he was the first head writer of SNL. He is also the first performer to utter a line on that series.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay. He was the therapist in the opening bits.
Oh, okay.
Belushi.
Wow.
While I was watching, I was like, I thought that was interesting that he was a writer.
Well, you get to kick us off for the best Scrooge category.
Oh, all right. Well, number 4 is going to be 88's Scrooged. Yeah, as much of an adaptation as this is, and whether it hits a lot of familiar story beats, like George had mentioned, it's not Ebenezer Scrooge. It's just not that. There's no nephew. It's just completely its own thing. But
he has the brother stand in for the nephew.
He does have the brother stand in for the nephew, yeah. And it's very familiar. And I mean, I don't know what the guy he fired would have represented. Would that have been the Dormouse?
Bobcat Goldthwait, or
it's just Bobcat Goldthwait?
Yeah, I felt like that's part of the story issue where it's like, okay, do we really need it? I mean it's kind of funny, but I don't know.
It is, but I mean, he's funny in Police Academy. He's a really great.
You see, I haven't seen Police Academy in forever. So.
Oh really?
Oh God, no.
I've seen the first one the most out of any of them.
Yeah, there's 6.
I thought there were 7.
God, maybe.
Didn't they do one in the
I know there's
90s?
At least I think there's 3 that have Gutenberg. Maybe
yeah, I want to say
4.
3 or 4 with Gutenberg, and then the rest is just ensemble.
After that, it's just kind of like
whoever we can get back.
Right, and I can never remember the one guy's name, but I'm like, oh yeah, he's from Police Academy, and I couldn't stand him in Police Academy. That's
which one?
He played the Bob Cratchit character in Scrooged. Bob, help me out. Would you remember his name?
Are you talking about Bobcat Goldthwait?
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Because I was like, I know him, and it's
he wasn't the Bob Cratchit character, but he was like a new character.
I don't think he was. Yeah.
No, Alfre Woodard was Bob Cratchit.
Yeah, the lady with the kid was.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Because her kid was a mute.
Yeah,
she was talking.
She was a longtime employee, just like Bob Cratchit. Yeah, but yeah, at first I thought he was the Bob Cratchit. Like before I rewatched these, I was thinking he was the Bob Cratchit.
Yeah,
right.
but
because he was in it quite a bit.
Oh yeah, it's not like it's not like any of the other movies have a character like him in it.
But yeah, he was tolerable in this one. Every time I watch the Police Academy movies, it's like anytime his character shows up, I'm like, oh.
Just the shtick. The shtick, it just isn't funny.
I still say they need to cast him in the MCU as the voice of Galactus.
Sure.
It's gonna be epic, guys. Trust me.
Why not? Okay, number 3. I have Michael Caine as that. I honorably, because he did legit play it straight. He did, and watching it, I kind of enjoy his performance a lot. Like I really do. But I didn't want to kind of have this list be dominant of theatrical destroying a television and not taking it away, because there were 2 great actors that also played this same role. amazingly well. But I had to put Michael Caine at number 3. Number 2 is Patrick Stewart. He is, amazing actor, very great, and I really did believe all of it when he was being, ruthless Mr. Scrooge. I just felt the ice and bitterness in his voice, and just his delivery was great. But he's no George C. Scott, and that comes in number 1 for me. I mean, Scott always gives powerhouse performances, commanding. He's great. He had to be my favorite Scrooge, so that's number 1 for me.
Many can't go there, and many would rather die. If they would rather die, perhaps they had better do so, and decrease the surplus population.
All right, so I think our lists are similar, probably maybe a little different. But I put Bill Murray in at number 4, just simply because it was an interesting take, but it was Bill Murray. He wasn't playing anybody else in that movie other than Bill Murray. So, and there's not much I'm going to really add. It was just watching Bill Murray be Bill Murray. My number 3, I put Patrick Stewart. He did an all right job. I wasn't entirely sold on him being cruel or cold. But again, he did an all right job for what it's worth. Number 2, I actually had forgotten how good Michael Caine was in the Muppets movie, actually. I wasn't expecting much when I watched it the other night, but he did it really well. I thought his body language was really good. His facial expressions were great. I was pleasantly surprised by it. Again, a lot of these movies I had not seen in over 20 years probably. So, number 2, Michael Caine. And it's hard to beat George C. Scott. Yeah, definite number 1. I mean, maybe they typecasted him, maybe they didn't. But, he plays mean very well. If you've seen him in other movies, you don't mess with him. He's intimidating. He's clearly a dick. He's cold as ice. It's I really, nailed that performance too. George C. Scott, number 1, Scrooge for me.
But you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work.
Christmas comes but once a year, sir.
Poor excuse for picking a man's pocket.
All right, so I'm going to sound like a complete broken record here. I guess not 100% broken record because it's not 100% accurate, but it's going to be similar. So number 4, and it's not even close for number 4. I feel like the top 3 are close, but the number 4, it's Bill Murray. We'll get to the quote after this, but there was lots of conflicts between Bill Murray and Richard Donner during this. Bill Murray seems like he wants to play this as a goofball, and he does a good job when he needs to just be the funny asshole. He's good at that. But when this moment calls upon him to be dramatic, when he needs to cry during the Ghost of Christmas Past, it feels so forced. When he needs to do his monologue at the end, that monologue is super lazy script writing, but a good performance, a really good actor could carry that and sell it. A couple actors, pretty much all the other actors of Scrooge, if they had to do that, they could probably sell the shit out of it. Bill Murray really doesn't, and it feels forced. It's not even close. He has his moments, but he's definitely number 4. Number 3, and these guys are all neck and neck. They all have their perks, but number 3, it's Michael Caine. He's very, very good. I don't know what else to say. He's good, and he's up against Patrick Stewart and George C. Scott, so he's coming in number 3. And number 2, it's Patrick Stewart. What I like about Patrick Stewart is that he doesn't play it 100% cruel. He plays it almost, I don't give a shit. I feel I get more of an I don't give a shit from him than I do from any of the other ones. I'm just pinching pennies, and that's the end. And I don't care about outside of that. And I appreciate him doing a different take and selling it. It worked for me. But he's not the number 1, and it's obvious who the number 1 is at this point. It's George C. Scott, who just fucking nails this movie. He is the anchor of this movie.
I mean,
he
absolutely
controls it.
Now,
oh god.
I will say one part I did really enjoy, and I kind of did watch. Like I went back and I got to that part when I was watching the George C. Scott version. After he wakes up after the ghost of Christmas yet to come and gets the little boy. And he talks to him, and first of all, I guess George C. Scott gives the kid more money. First off, I noticed he said a different increment. I forget what it was, but also when Patrick Stewart says, like, I'll give you he hesitated and didn't say it at first. Like, you saw like him kind of make a cringe face, and then he shook his head and then said, if you hurry, I'll give you that. And I'll give you a quid. If you're back in 5 minutes, I'll give you 2 quid. And like the kid took off. I noticed that. I was like, you winced before you said that, Patrick. I caught that.
Yeah.
Did you forget where we are in the story?
Well, no, I almost kind of like that because that's showing Scrooge. There's a little bit of old Scrooge still there, but he knows he needs to work past it. I like that. No.
Yeah, still, like, Stewart did do choices like that, and I did really like that. But again, like it's George C. Scott, like.
Hear me, I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been but for this visitation. Why show me this if I am past all hope?
I mean,
it's great.
What we're dealing with is some powerhouse performances in Bill Murray.
Yeah.
He was really just playing Bill Murray.
To
be honest.
I mean,
like I said, he was good at being a dick, but like anytime you need to do something somewhat dramatic, it flopped.
Well, it was just catering to his usual comedy style, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he later in his career did show that he can do dramatic with like Lost in Translation and those, Gus Van Sant or that other guy who did like Royal Tenenbaums and...
Oh, shit, yeah.
Oh, God,
I know that. Wes Anderson.
That guy.
Yeah, no, he is a great actor, but not here.
Not here, yeah.
Well, this was also during the height of kind of, the 80s. He broke away from SNL, started doing kind of a lot of his own, or maybe late 70s rather, but that's when his comedy film career really took off. And I think at that point we haven't quite gotten out of it. It's just kind of more of the same Bill Murray type comedy that we're used to, I think. This would have been roughly around Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, it would have been a little bit before then. It was also like the first. This is the first one of the first
Stripes,
like starring roles he did that wasn't an ensemble. But yes, as you may notice, the scores. Christmas Carol '84 shot up quick at the end. But
I think I put it at my number 1 on almost every category except for.
Well, I grew up on that one, so that's a special place. I gave it number 1 for supporting cast, and you guys were like at the bottom of that one. And I admit I'm a sucker for. He is so fun.
It's all right.
But as I said, a movie needs to win the majority, not plurality, and no movie has plurality. That means we have to eliminate the bottom one, which would be Patrick Stewart's Christmas Carol. So.
Sending it to the Forbidden Zone.
Yep, it's gone. And that means... And I'm the one person who gave it a point. So that point now goes to second place. And if you remember, it's going to be a very interesting round right here. That switch up didn't get interesting. Yeah, that was the story point I gave it. Yeah. And number 2 is 84. Officially, 84 has won the majority now. Yay. Yes. So, do you guys have any afterthoughts on these movies?
It was nice rewatching them, I'll say.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, I'm one of those people that will watch A Christmas Story every time it's on. But these other ones are just ones I just caught on TV at various times, over the years. So this was, rewatching these again was like watching them for the first time. I just hadn't seen them in so long.
I have a couple of...
I enjoyed them all. Very, very, and they were really fun.
So I have a couple of trivia bits I was going to share. First on Muppet Christmas Carol, which I think I shared on the last podcast with Rob, but it would feel weird not to also state it here. Before production began, Sir Michael Caine told producer and director Brian Henson, "I'm going to play this movie like I'm working with the Royal Shakespeare Company. I will never wink. I will never do anything Muppety. I'm going to play Scrooge as if it is an utterly dramatic role and there are no puppets around me." And Henson just replied, "Yes, bang on." And that really shows in his performance. He just goes all in, and that's really what the role calls for. Yeah. Like, you can't be in a Muppet movie and wink at the camera.
No, not like these newer modern ones where these newer actors, I think, in the past too, they pretty much are hamming it up with them. And it's like, look, I'm with Kermit.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, no, you just got to treat it like
well, especially
like,
that
okay,
last one.
You're a talking okay, you're a talking frog. You need help? What can I do for you? Just go with it.
No, yeah. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, the newer ones, it I don't know, it really just pisses me off when I see them, because I guess it's because I grew up watching those older ones, so I'm used to it just being, oh, okay, this is normal. So, but yeah, how the modern ones take it and they do ham it up for it. It's I'm not a fan.
Agreed. It's something I noticed with the this Muppet movie. I didn't realize that his son Brian Henson had been doing work that early on, because I think that was like 91 or 92, wasn't it?
Yeah, I want to say Jim died like a year before. Wasn't it dedicated to Jim at the end? I misremember.
It was, and I think this was the first one that they did since he passed.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't catch that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, so a little bit of trivia on Scrooged. Bill Murray and director Richard Donner reportedly did not enjoy working together, creating a lot of tension on set.
Shocking.
When asked by film critic Roger Ebert if he had any disagreements with Donner, Murray replied, "Only a few, every single minute of the day. That could have been a really, really great movie. The script was so good. There's maybe one take in the final cut of the movie that's his mine. We made it so fast. It was like doing a movie live. He kept telling me to do things louder, louder, louder. I think he was deaf." Now, I'm going to give you my thoughts on this, because I think a lot of the quality of this movie kind of comes from Richard Donner. Like, he knew how to direct the shit out of this movie. It is well put together. I think, like, he brings up the script's great. I don't think the script's... Like, if the script is anything like represented on screen, I don't think the script's great. And I also think Murray, who had largely done, like, lots of stuff with Ramis and Reitman at this point, I think he's more used to working on kind of a zanier set. Like, if you hear stories of Harold Ramis movie sets, lots of times he just has actors ad-lib, and he puts it together in the end, and it works. Like Caddyshack, you can tell that's an ad-libbed movie for the most part. That story is barely existent, but it's fun.
Yeah.
That's what Harold Ramis is good at. That's not what Richard Donner does. Not by a mile. And I think you're just seeing conflicting styles. And honestly, I think Donner does a much better job than Murray in that movie. For all the how much I like Bill Murray, I think Richard Donner really shines in that movie. Let's see. This is going to come out a week from today. So, yeah, the next podcast from you guys watching or listening's perspective might be the Genesis one if you're watching. If you're listening, it's going to be, we got to slam a whole bunch to watch. We're going to have Spider-Man No Way Home, we're going to have Matrix Resurrections, and we're going to have the last 3 episodes of Hawkeye. So that should be a fun episode. Yeah, I think that's it. So let's everyone have a good one.
Yeah. All right.
Take care.
Thanks.
I want to go ahead and add some audio credits at the end here. The theme music you're hearing at the beginning and end of this podcast was written and performed by George Johnson, a very good friend of mine. And my current Patreons are Fel Martins, David Lara, and Lindsay Pankhurst. If you'd like to become a patron, go ahead and follow the link down below anything you can provide would be incredibly helpful to this channel. We're barely limping by right now. I'd love to make this my full-time job, but I'm miles away from that right now. So any help you could provide, just $1 a month would be amazing. You know you want to. All your friends are doing it.
Look here! Beneath my robe! Look upon these